Hi, and welcome to today's cooking lesson. We're going to learn how to make something called roux, R-O-U-X. I know it looks like it should be pronounced roux, but it's a French word and their spelling is different. So in order to make the roux, you need to have everything ready. Remember that the proportions are for every 1 cup of liquid, you're going to use 1 tablespoon of butter and 2 tablespoons of flour. Now I plan on making 2 cups of gravy based on my roux. So I've got 2 tablespoons of butter that I'm going to put into my pan here. Now I didn't turn the pan on a whole lot before this video started. You don't need to preheat it or anything. The butter's going to melt in there anyhow. And what you want to do is you just want to stir that butter a bit and get it all nice and melty. Then, since I said for every 1 tablespoon of butter, I need 2 tablespoons of flour. I've got my 4 tablespoons of flour ready here. And since I'm going to make 2 cups of gravy, I've got my 2 cups of liquid. The liquid does not have to be water. It can be beef stock, chicken stock, whatever flavored liquid you've got. I don't happen to have any beef stock, and I do want to put it with some roast that I'm planning on eating. So I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to use bouillon cubes. They're just these little squares there. You can also use the Better Than Bouillon sort of a gooey, clumpy thing that you can buy at the store. But anything that you can use to make a sort of a beef-based broth or a chicken-based broth. You can make chicken gravy. You can do turkey gravy this way. And if you like sausage and cream gravy with biscuits, you can make cream gravy using the same proportions of milk and flour, but you substitute milk instead of the broth. So I've got my butter all nice and melted here, and I'm going to throw in my 4 tablespoons of flour. You don't need to do anything fancy with it. Sprinkle it, turn it in a little bit by little. Just go ahead and throw it on in there. And then you're just going to stir it until the flour and the butter sort of coat and you don't see any loose flour particles floating around. And you've cleaned the sides of your pan there. Oops, there's a little bit of flour there. And you want to do this in a hurry because if you leave it in there too long, the flour is going to burn. So you know you've got the stuff that looks like paste. And at this point, if you were making this in advance, you could actually freeze this in portions. So you could make a gravy later, but I intend to do mine right away. Oops, butter's on the stove there. Let's not waste that. Okay, so it's all stirred in there. So now I'm just going to go ahead and dump in my water. Now it's hitting the pan and sizzling because I microwaved my water to get it hot so that you wouldn't have to see it take forever to get hot on the video. You don't have to do that at school. Just pour cold water in there and you are good to go. Honey, where is my whisk? All right. So now that I've got that in there, you'll notice I stirred my butter with a heat-safe spatula type concoction. You can just use a regular spatula or a wooden spoon. But now that I've got it in there, I'm going to need to use a whisk because if I don't whisk it constantly, I'm going to end up with lumpy gravy. Now, if you're at home and you don't have a chance to whisk it constantly and let it boil for a bit, you can always cheat, throw it in the blender, and then run it through a mesh strainer to get all the lumps out. But that's kind of cheating, and we don't want to do that. So basically, you're just going to keep stirring and stirring and stirring, and notice how close my liquid is to the edge of the pan. That's kind of a no-no. I had to pick a short pan so you guys could see it on the video because I don't have a fancy camera set up. And you'll notice that I'm not actually stirring in a circle. I'm just going back and forth. You can see the streaks there. That is the color from the bouillon going across. But when this thing starts to boil, I'm going to boil over on my stove and make a mess. So you should have probably used a much bigger pan. So make sure you have room in your pan for the boiling. And you can see already that it's starting to bubble up just a bit. And I've got like a little clump of butter and flour there. And that means that I got to whisk more. And again, there's no, supposedly if you go in a figure 8, that's the most efficient stirring pattern. But if I do that, my liquid's going to bubble up and bubble over, so I can just go back and forth here. And just keep going, and you can see I'm already starting to bubble. Once you get to a full boil, you have to boil for 3 minutes. Oops, okay, I'm starting to bubble over. Let me put this aside a second. I got to get a much bigger pan before I make a mess. Okay, there's my bigger pan. Oops. Yep. I'm going to put that all in there, and it's a good thing I've got my spatula handy. I can just scrape it all out. I wouldn't want to leave the bouillon pieces because that's my flavor there. And once you've got it all scraped out, now you don't need to do this at school, guys. All you need to do is pick a big enough pan so you don't make the same mistake I did. So make sure you pick a big enough pan. You're going to be making 2 cups of gravy. And just set that aside there, and it started to boil. And you don't ever want to stop stirring it, because if you stop stirring it, the flour loves to make lumps, and it does like to burn on the bottom. So let's just keep going and going and going. And not bubbling yet. See that? There's no bubbles. So let's just keep going until I get the bubbles. And that's it. Make sure that you have someone at the stove boiling and bubbling the whole time. This is not, when you're making roux or making gravy, whether it's broth gravy or cream gravy, or you're just thickening up a soup. And again, remember the proportions are thin. You want 1 tablespoon butter, 1 tablespoon flour, 1 cup liquid. Medium thickness, 2 tablespoons butter, 2 tablespoons flour, 1 cup liquid. Super thick, 2 tablespoons butter. You'll notice the butter didn't go up. 3 tablespoons flour, 1 cup of liquid. So it's really as simple as 1, 2, 3. For every tablespoon of liquid, you put 1, 2, or 3 tablespoons of flour, depending on how thick you want it. And then you get the ever so exciting fun arm workout, where you just keep stirring and stirring and stirring. Now eventually this is going to boil. Once it boils, I'm going to boil it for 3 minutes, and you do that because flour is a raw ingredient. You need to cook the flour, heating it. Again, remember, wet flour, gluten does weird things. Heating the liquid means that the flour will actually cook and set, which is what makes it thicker, and it also gets rid of that raw floury taste. And it all tastes good together. Now you can season your gravies when you're done. Most people just stick to salt and pepper. I'm not going to put any salt in here, and neither are you, because bouillon cubes are really, really salty to begin with. They got like a day's worth of sodium in there. You'd be much better off using canned broth, or one of those little pourable cartons of broth. But that's not what I had available, and we're going to use the bouillon at school. And you'll notice it gets a nice, lovely gravy color there. It's still not boiling, and it's going to take a while to boil because, oh wait, when I traded my pan, I forgot to turn the heat on. Sorry, guys. So let's turn some heat on. And you can do this on a medium to medium-high heat. Never, ever high heat. And don't bother with low. It'll never boil. So hopefully this will cook a little faster now that I've turned the oven on. I got air bubbles, but I don't have any heat bubbles. So anyhow, guys, I'm not going to make you watch me stir this whole thing here. You saw how I made the roux, which was really the important part. Melt the butter, add the flour, stir till it blends, add the liquids, and since I was adding the bouillon cubes, I did that. But usually you would just add just the beef broth as is. You could, if you wanted to get fancy, boil the water, dissolve the bouillon in the water, and then just pour it all in as one big thing. And then you stir, stir, stir. Did I mention you stir? Stir and stir some more. And then once it starts boiling, set the timer for 3 minutes. When you're done with that, yeah, do have to set the gravy off and let it cool a little bit, because otherwise it's really thick and really runny. Let it cool off, and then it should make a lovely gravy. And I think that's all we're going to do, guys. I will talk to you in class if you have questions. Bye.